Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm here to discuss a crucial issue that has been debated for decades, and that is gun rights in America. In light of recent violence that has plagued our nation, many people are questioning whether we need to revisit the Second Amendment and reevaluate each individual American's right to bear arms. As a responsible and law abiding citizen and supporter of the Second Amendment, I firmly believe that every American citizen has the right to own and bear arms. In this speech, I will present arguments from credible sources to support my position. First and foremost, the Second Amendment is a fundamental right that is enshrined in our Constitution. It states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This amendment was added to the Constitution for a reason, and it must be respected and upheld. As the National Rifle Association states, the Second Amendment is not a suggestion or a guideline, it is a right. The Second Amendment was put in place to ensure that Americans had the right to defend themselves against any threat, including the government. Taking away this right would go against the principles of the Constitution. Gun ownership is not just a constitutional right, but it's also a means of self-defense. Owning a gun can provide a sense of security and protection to individuals and their families. The Well-Armed Woman, a national organization dedicated to educating and empowering women in the area of firearms, provides numerous stories of women using guns to defend themselves against attackers. Guns can also be used by law-abiding citizens to prevent crime, according to recent surveys by the Pew Research Center and Gallup. About 4 in 10 U.S. adults live in a household with a gun, and about 1/3 say they personally own a firearm. In addition to providing protection, gun ownership is deeply ingrained in American culture, and gun rights have a significant impact on hunting and recreation. The National Survey of Fishing, Hunting, and Wildlife Associated Recreation, conducted every 5 years by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Census Bureau, shows that approximately 10 million used firearms for hunting in 2016. This highlights the essential role that firearms play in hunting and the necessity of protecting gun rights to preserve this tradition. We cannot ignore the fact that gun violence is a serious problem in America. However, it is believed that this issue can be addressed through better education and training and stronger enforcement of existing gun laws. The National Shooting Sports Foundation, a trade association for the firearms industry, asserts that the focus should be on enforcing the laws that are already on the books. The Trace, a nonprofit news organization that covers gun violence in America, agrees that laws are only effective if they are enforced. While it is true that there are numerous cases of gun violence in the United States, it is important to remember that the vast majority of gun owners are responsible and law abiding citizens. In fact, according to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, there are over 100 million law abiding gun owners in the United States. Taking away the right to own a gun would not only be unconstitutional, but would also be unfair to those who use their guns responsibly. The right to bear arms is a fundamental part of our nation's history and identity, and should not be taken away from law abiding citizens because of the actions of few. As responsible gun owners, we have a duty to ensure that our firearms are not misused. It's essential to advocate for safe and responsible gun ownership and educate ourselves and others on proper firearm handling and storage. This includes keeping a gun out of the hands of those who are not legally allowed to own them, such as felons or those with a history of mental illness. We must acknowledge that gun violence is often a result of mental illness, poverty, a lack of education. Instead of solely blaming guns and law abiding gun owners, we should focus on addressing the root cause of gun violence. In conclusion, the right to bear arms is a fundamental right that is enshrined in our Constitution and should not be infringed upon. While we cannot ignore the tragic consequences of gun violence, we must avoid punishing law abiding citizens for their actions of few. Instead, we should enforce existing gun laws and work towards solutions that tackle the underlying issues of violence in our society. As President Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handled on for them to do the same. Thank you, everyone.